Isaac, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm fine. What about you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm super excited to finally talk to somebody who's just as excited about saber-toothed cats as I am. I feel like every single time I start a conversation with somebody, their eyes glaze over and they get really bored. So I'm super excited to talk to you about stuff.
I'm excited as well because it's a topic that I spent much of my life on it. Like my first drawing, to be honest, was a saber tooth when I was 5 years old. So I always get excited to talk about those cats. So I'm pretty excited too. Very happy to be there. Really happy.
That's awesome. So from as long as you can remember, you've been fascinated with these creatures. So is that right?
Yeah, is that right? I've always had some sort of fascination, or I would say, I don't know, it just hangs on me. It's obsessed. I'm obsessed with it. So always like those cats. It's it's truly marvelous to know how they act, how they wear on their environment. It's always something that I catch myself thinking on it, and I do my art based on that, on findings, on articles, papers regarding saber tooths. So there's a lot to talk about.
There sure is. There sure is. One thing I would love for you to do, if you don't mind, Isaac, is if you could outline a little bit about yourself and what you studied and what you do, if you want to do a little bit of that.
Yes. Well, I'm 21 years old. I live in Brazil, and I study biology on my university. I always loved animals since I was a child. Everything that I do now started as a child. Since I was very young, my parents and some familiars told me that I was going to be a biologist when I was adult, and it turned out to be quite real, quite true. So nowadays, I study biology. I gather my knowledge based on real animals, and currently my objective is to go further and further. So staying there, appearing there on your podcast is quite a, I don't know how to say it. It's a, it's remarkable for me. It's quite a step up
Oh,
because people are getting to notice what I do. Anyway, regarding my personal likes, I'm studying right now, just studying. I'm not working. I'm tired, focused on what I'm doing. My entire family, to be honest, already knows what I'm doing, like both in biology topic, on paleontologic topic, paleo illustrations. So I would say that my life, it's around animals. I have pet animals, I draw animals, I study animals. I study animals on the university, so everything goes around that. And it's very recent, actually. It's 3 months since I started doing paleo art, paleo illustration, and reconstructions in general for real, like seriously this time. And I don't think in stopping anywhere soon, to be honest.
yeah, man, don't ever stop. I think your work is really good. I just came across it because I search around on the internet and I forget which illustration I saw first, but I saw it was one of the saber-tooth cats and I'm like, okay, I definitely got to talk to this guy. Um, it fascinates me how people are able to reconstruct animals that have been extinct for thousands of years. I mean, when we think about paleo art, we think about dinosaurs and stuff like that. But I personally, I think we know more about dinosaurs than we know about the Pleistocene animals. I think uh, there's a lot of there's a lot of shows and movies, and they focus, if they're talking about extinct animals, they'll focus on the dinosaurs because they're fantastic. But I think it's a crime. It's criminal activity to skip over animals
Yeah,
like the saber-toothed cat. I mean, they were just the most incredible animals. And then we can talk about a little bit, or I think I'd like to nerd out quite a bit about the Homotherium Cub mummy that was just found. That is out of this world. Lucky
yeah.
that that happened. What do you think about that, Isaac?
When I first saw it, I was going to university, and a friend of mine sent me a message with the link of the image. I'll, I will be honest with you. Immediately, I thought I was about to cry because never in my life I would see a saber tooth like that. I always dream of finding a mummified saber tooth. It came being happening. It happened. So I got very excited. Th- 4 or 3 of my last posts are about this saber tooth. This it's the first time that I see that we see a species that doesn't exist today. Nothing comes close to that. It's it's simply, I think it's the finding of the decade, maybe the even the century, because it's something so how I use those words. It's so cool. Mm, I don't know how to describe it because it's something that every now and often come to our minds, like how a saber tooth would look like. We depict them
Yes.
in movies like Ice Age, like some terror movies, fictional, fun fiction movies out there, sci-fi, for example. But we never actually saw one. We don't even have cave paintings of saber tooth, so it's very rare, very very special to say at least. And it's a cub. Additional point, it's a
Yeah.
cub. We never saw a cub of a saber tooth. Now we know that they didn't were born with those fangs hanging out. They will grow across time. It will further develop in the adult life. So it's truly remarkable. It's just best find in years.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Isaac. I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit during our test, but you, in the permafrost, when the scientists find all these animals, they find mostly prey animals, herbivores. So a lot of mammoths, like woolly mammoth babies and deer and other fauna. But to find a big predator like that is insane because if you think about living cats, they're so elusive. They're like they're like ghosts, and to be able to get one preserved, it's such a fragile moment in time during the ice age that's preserved, and then the study that came out of that is just so cool. And you touched on this a little bit just now, is that it was nothing like what we have today. And one of the things that rubs me the wrong way in popular culture, a lot of people call them saber-toothed tigers, as if that they're tigers with long teeth. Could you talk a little bit about how wrong that really is from your perspective?
It's something that um, people often it's very it's very common to just make a lion or a tiger with very exaggerated fangs popping out of
Yeah.
this its mouth, just like a vampire. But it's not like that. It's very you. It's because I think we try to make them look as close as possible to modern cats, but they behave in different ways. Their anatomy is quite different. Like their face are longer, their nasal opening is larger for some extent, and the canines they're much longer, much longer. I think the closest we got today is the clouded leopard, but Smilodon, for example, it's very large, like this amount of fang, just being the fang of the animal, not even the complete skull. So when you look at a saber-tooth cat, not tiger, they were completely different from tigers. Just here sharing that, we have to imagine something different, something that um, makes use of the musculature of the animal, like the checks covering the fangs. We often thought the for some time that the Homotherium had its fangs exposed, but some felines nowadays they actually have some kind of space in between the lips that cover their fangs. And those species of saber-toothed cats could have the same thing since their fangs were not as long as Marodon, for example. So I guess it's a mistake to call those animals saber-toothed tigers. Saber-toothed cats or saber-toothed felines were for much time the dominant form of feline in the earth. The felines that we know today were kind of submissive towards those animals. They dominated for a long time. So calling them tigers is not enough. Neither depict them as saber-toothed tigers in any way.
Yeah. 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 It really rubs me the wrong way. It's like calling the loser the winner. I mean, exactly as you say, this is the apex predator of the time, and there's all this debate about how powerful they were, or how powerful they weren't, and how powerful was their bite. But just looking at the amount of time they were around and what they did is insane. And if we're going to talk about the cub mummy, the Homotherium cub mummy, I did a little bit of research on Homotherium, and that it was the most widely spread cat probably of all time. It went from it went from back when England, the UK was like still part of the rest of Europe, that part of area, and it stretched all across Russia, all across the Bering Land Bridge, all across North America. That is impressive. I'm gonna pull up some images of the study, and I was wondering if you could illuminate us into your thought processes of your version of the Homotherium drawing as we go through the images. Does that sound cool to you, Isaac?
All right.
All right, man, let's do that. Here we go. So that's the first image there of this cub mummy, and then the bones underneath. Is there anything you want to talk about with that image?
What I wanted to talk about that is that we only know half of the cub. Like it's already some crazy finding, but we only know half of it. It's I. we are lucky, but at the same time, we had some bad luck. It's only half of it. So we could gather much more on the palette coloration or a possible pattern. I think that most of the black area that covers the left paw, I guess, is mostly dirt. But um, if we follow the same pattern that happened with the Came Lion Cubs, probably a second study will come out that will analyze this cub. But we can see some intricate details on that, like it's a lot of fur around the neck. We have some kind of black area, like a tear across the nose. I don't know if you can see that. It's very on the point
Yes.
of the nose. You have a small ear. Is I don't. Yes, it's a movie, but it's very hard to identify anything in between this cub. But you can see the proportion of the paws is very large. I guess it's similar case to the lynx we know today that they have enlarged paws to wander through snow. So I imagine it's the same case for
Mm.
Homotherium, considering that most of their range uh, had snow in it. They crossed Beringia and were as far as Siberia, Russia. It's so they had to deal with some deep snow in order to hunt. And remember, this was a pursuit hunt cat. It pursued his prey. It run after his prey much more than the cats that we know today. For now, I think that's how I can point from this mummy and this view. I think if we look at the face, we can see more details.
Yes, sir. Let's get on to the face. Let me zoom out just a little bit, just so we can see. Because I think it's so cool how in the study they compared this cub's face to a lion cub's face. And you
Yeah.
can immediately see the differences.
Well, I think the most prominent differences is is the uh, skull area. Principally, the top of it, which is very large compared to the African cub, the African lion cub. The African lion cub has a smaller skull by comparison. It's very the nose, for example, is thinner, I would guess, and the ears of the lion are bigger.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Homotherium has a very wide neck. It's almost almost two times larger than the cave lion cub. The lion cub, sorry. And you have the beard, which is very odd for a feline. So I saw many artists this depicting this as a true beard that would grow across time. I find that very interesting, and it's one of the characteristics that I hope we can study and know what was its purpose. I saw some people to thought that they thought that it was some type of cover, like maintain the brief more hot, more warm the fangs or hide the fangs more effectively. But I don't know. It's very mysterious for me. It's
Yeah.
it's very impressive to be honest. Also, you can see some kind of pattern there. Although the study uh, talked that there wasn't no markings or no rosettes, nothing. You can see that the eye area is quite dark compared to the main color. The side of the mouth is also dark, where you can see more. The top of the forehead of the animal is also a bit dark. The eyes have some white coloration that we found in lions and tigers of today, lions, tigers, leopards. So it's very interesting to see how it compares to the modern felines. It's very interesting in general. I think that it's the most impressive part of this study, the most interesting one. Mm,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I agree. And what was one of the things I was wondering about is that tuft on the chin. And I couldn't tell if that was just an artifact of maybe the cub lying down in a certain position and that tuft of the fur was protruding out, or if this was actually longer hair. And you're saying you think that is longer hair like a beard.
yeah, I think it's a longer hair, but could be something during the mummifying process. Could be
Uh-huh.
some kind of dirtiness. I don't know, but for now, it looks and matches like a beard because it's the same color as the more pale looking area around the eye. So I expected in life this color could have probably a ton of white, like Siberian tigers, for example, or lynxes. So
Yeah.
I think it's part of the hair, but I don't know if that would grow throughout the cub life, like reaching a full bear when adult. He could lose or develop that. It could go both ways. I don't know. We need to find an adult specimen to certify
Exactly.
that.
Yes, exactly. I just think this is so wild because I've been following a bunch of people who are paleo artists for a long time, and I remember I think it was Massimo Molinari or somebody like that, and he was drawing a homotherium, and I commented, I was like, "Man, it sure would be great if somebody found a homotherium cub somewhere in the permafrost." And they commented back like, "Yeah, sure would be good." Lo and behold, this happened. I can't even believe it as I'm looking at it. But as the subject that we're talking about is from cub to adult, there's no way of knowing what develops and what doesn't. And so I seriously hope that we find an adult there, because is the beard a real beard? Is that going to grow out? Is their facial musculature going to change over time? Is their fur color going to be different? Oh, let me ask you a question about the fur color. So the mummification process changes the fur color, is that right? So how do we?
Yeah, the mummification process changes the color. And to be honest, even the dirt around it changes the color as well. When we first saw the cave lion cubs, they were pretty dirty, almost dark brown in color. And the second study came out, and they were much clearer to see. They were just as the same color as a lion today. I made a study about that on my Twitter account. I don't know if you can check it out now, but I made some intriguing research on what the possible adult color could look like. It could be more vivid, more it could develop more patterns, or it could lose all of them. Some lion cubs nowadays they are born with spots. I think everyone saw that, can see that. But as they grow larger and become adult, they lose it. But this could
Yeah,
happen with Homotherium. But there are some cats that start without spots, without any pattern, and grow towards the adult phase and starts developing a range of colors like lynxes and
yeah,
bobcats. A bobcat of similar age as the Homotherium cub is completely brown, almost entirely brown. Only the face has some patterning, similar to the Homotherium cub, which has like some tear around the eye, but when they're adult, they develop spots, rosettes, so it can be very variable. In wolf and bear cubs, we don't see this kind of uh, changes. To be honest, felines are the most health variated carnivores in their entire world. They have so many colors, so guessing distinct cat color can be tricky, very tricky. So you have to get a bit further and imagine very many possibilities. I imagine that an adult Homotherium, considering that they lived in a open plain area, they could lose those spots. They could lose any pattern and be perfect for camouflage and the mammoth staffy that roam across Asia, Eurasia, and North America. Could be a possibility.
Okay, yes. So this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, Isaac, is trying to guess the coat patterns of different extinct cats is so tricky, like you just said. So for example, I was reading Mauricio Anton's book and he's talking about how, like, for example, a lion is an open territory hunter. So they spend most of their time chasing down their prey, and they happen to have a plain coat, whereas a tiger is an ambush predator in thick vegetation and they have stripes, they have a pattern. But there are exceptions. So, like a mountain lion or a puma, they're a different type of hunter and they have a plain coat. So, if you had to guess, and I can also share the image of your homotherium, and I just want to know your thought process. And if you could be a betting man and put your money on it, what do you think the homotherium would look like?
Well, this color that I made, it's a very interesting question that you bought because the cougar or mountain lion, they live in forests of United States across America. They live in a range of environments. Like they can live in tropical forests, like those of South America. They can live in mountain range in Alaska. They can live in those forests of Yellowstone Park, like we see. But as you can see as well, their coat color it's very, how do I say, it's almost the same across the regions. Even if the habitat
Yeah.
changes much, like more forest or more open, it's the same. So we can question ourselves like if the puma it's like that, how would be modern cats? So I stayed with something like that in mind when I was doing Homotherium because I thought, well, this was a cat found in Europe, Asia, the Java Island, North America, and probably even South America in dense forests. So we need to have a code that mimics and can adapt to that kind of environment. So I look it for modern animals that follow a same thing, dark or red brown in color, but keeps the same pattern across its range. I think the closest examples are the cougar, as we said, have the African wild cat, I think, African forest wild cat or African golden cat, that they are dark brown color as well. There's leopards. They have a quite wide range from Africa to Asia, Siberia, but they
That's right.
live in forests. They are adapted to forests, trees in general. They love to
Yep.
hide in between the trees. They can live in mountains too, but it's only one species that live in the mountains, that is the Persian leopard. So we need I needed to have an adaptive fur. So I made it be more vibrant, more vivid in color, just like the cougars, and some kind of pattern that I made around the face based on the small pup. When I made this Homotherium, I thought that the pattern could develop more in the adult form. To be honest, most of the cats, they start with a small pattern and develop further this same pattern. They can be more lighter in color when adults. They can be more, their color can be more saturated. So I imagine something like that for Homotherium. But it's hard to imagine that thing would live quite well in a closed habitat like a closed forest. So I imagine that uh, could have some variation. There are some animals that have some variation across the continent, across many continents, like the lynx. We have spotted lynx on downside more south in the United States. I think Mexican bobcats are more spotted, while the lynx on the upper north is more plain colored. The Eurasian lynx is a bit spotty, a bit plain, so it varies. And they are very closely related species. So imagine that different species of Homotherium could have some more clear variation in the fur, while
Right.
its most successful variation, the Latidans, which had the widest range across Eurasia, the Mapham stiff, they would be more plain than the others. They were quite successful, so there would be different populations to cover those areas, the closed and open areas, like we see in lynxes, bobcats, and cougars. Some cougars from more closer habitats have some slight differences. I told you that they almost doesn't have variation, but they have. Some cougars are more darker. They have some further. How can I say? They are born with spots, and those spots
Yes.
they remain on the cub collar for some time more than the. I mean, North living cougars. Cougars in South America, I think they have some darker coloration as well. So I imagine
Yes.
something like that for a material. Since it's a very successful cat, it could have some kind of adaptation across populations. Natural selection, isn't?
Yes. You make a very interesting point about looking at extant cats that are very widespread as well. It would make perfect sense to me that a cat who is that widespread would want a more versatile coat because they're they're living in all different types of environment. Of course, as far as I'm aware, the Homotherium was more adapted to open steppe, like open tundra and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but in different continents. So that would mean I could see an argument for like for example, you're talking about cougars, pumas, mountain lions. The northern North American puma that you might find in California or the west of America, they're more the color that you just had for your Homotherium. It's more like a burnt orange type of color. But then the
Yes.
ones in Argentina or Patagonia or whatever, they're more gray, but they still resemble each other very well. Now, I think I can agree with you. I think for a very widespread cat, it would make sense. One of the questions I want to ask is about more the musculature, the bone structure. We just went over the face of the cub mummy, and it was really rounded. And so I was wondering, was this drawing done before the mummy came out or after? And depending on that, would you change anything, or do you think this would be the natural progression of a Homotherium into an adult?
I think would be the natural progression. I wouldn't
Okay.
change much on my uh the piece I've made, the drawing I made. I was I could eliminate that pattern around the eye that goes along the cheek, but it's very slight differences. So I
Yeah.
think that the this plain brown form could be the final one for an adult, and the musculature as well. I considered some things from this study that we didn't had some kind of knowledge on it. For example, we knew that the neck of Homotherium was quite thick and long, but we didn't imagine that already in the cub form, they have such thick neck compared to lion cub,
Yeah.
like we saw earlier on the paper. So I made the neck even more thicker than my previous uh, art pieces of Homotherium. Also made the paws very large, larger than previously estimated, so it could wander through snow with quite ease, not much difficult. I made also some short-bodied cat, much like a hyena, as it was thought. The short tail
Yes.
is still there, but I think I focus most on making it look fluffier, like an insane amount of fur to keep this cat warm during the glacial periods, the snowy periods of its time. Most of the time, it was uh, snow around everywhere, so this cat needed to be warm, and the cub does have a quite amount of fur around its neck compared to a lion cub. It's very thick fur, so I imagine that an adult could have something like that, or even more, even more.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And you said you're just talking about hyenas. Could you talk a little bit about their bone structure? And because that's one of the things I'm wondering is with these extinct cats, these saber-toothed cats, I see a pattern, and the pattern seems to be that the forearms, the forelimbs are huge, super muscular, and then they have a sloping spine and shorter back legs. And was there, do you think their gait, their walk was more bounding like a hyena? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's more closer to a hyena, but not entirely a hyena-like cat.
Yes.
Mauricio Anton, the paleontologist that you asked about earlier, he made a study about Homotherium, about its gait, the way it could possibly walk, and its results was some kind of mix between cat and hyena. And that's hard to imagine, right? Like, how you
Yes.
can mix both? And I know it's still a cat, but hyena like. Anyway, the short column, the large forearms, probably to restrain prey as quick as possible and can deliver its fatal bite. And you'll see very stocky legs, not only the forearms, but also short legs, probably more robust than nowadays cats. Nowadays cats, they follow a pattern to be agile, to be some good runners, so can have some quite good explosions of velocity so they can catch their prey. While saber-tooths, they could possibly go a more ambush type of predator, so they would rely on the strength to immobilize their prey since they can't run as fast or probably didn't run as fast as modern day cats. So we can see some kind of things like that on Homotherium. But Homotherium is one particular case of saber-tooth because compared to others that I made previously, he's more lighter, perhaps
Yes.
more skinner. He's an unique cat. He's the most I think the most fascinating thing about Homotherium is that differently from Smilodon, he hunted like a wolf, like a hyena. He uh, took down and chased down his prey for some considerable amount of time. And we don't see that in lions or tigers. They just they need to get as close as possible in order to have some chance of catching their prey, or their stamina will just run out and they will have to try again. Meanwhile, Homotherium would chase their prey for some time, for some distances. And that required some kind of structure that um, I would think would able them to not spend so much energy running, like being lighter as well, despite being larger in frame than lions and tigers of today. They are about the same weight, for example. Meanwhile, a smilodon weighs about 30 30 kilogram. I don't know how to say 30,000 kilos. I mean,
Woo.
so I would say that Homotherium is more aggressive. He's a different type of cat, something that we probably will never see again. A cat that hunted like a wolf. It's something to think about.
Yes. Yeah, it's giving me shivers down my spine to think about it. And as you're describing that, I think it makes a really good point to think about the environment that they were living in. The open mammoth steppe and the tundra. There's nowhere to hide. There's tall grass, but there's no thick brush or anything where you can make a significant amount of cover and use that. So you would have to be able to be a long distance runner. You would have to, it's a marathon to get after the prey you're getting after. But still at the same time, I could see them getting away with being heavier than a wolf, heavier than any other cat that's living today because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac, but were Homotherium one of the predators who would actually hunt down mammoths?
Juveniles at most, but if we consider a social life, we have signs of social life in Homotherium that could possibly uh, chase down some sub-adults, juveniles, maybe female adults, but not male adult mammals, since they're pretty much larger than anything else in their
Yeah.
ecosystem, and would probably need an insane amount of cats to bring down one. But I do think that they were preying on mammoths on some daily basis, probably juveniles. Mammals were quite
Yeah.
widespread as well, so they were pretty much everywhere, and they needed a predator that could stalk them and chase them. So I think it was Homotherium until the humans appeared.
Yes. I think, yeah, because that's the thing is like, I don't see Homotherium maybe chasing, like for example, a cheetah will chase an impala and the Impala wins almost every time, right? Because they're just so fast. So you would need a predator that's able to be, during the ice age, a predator that would have to be a long distance runner, but also be able to chase down huge prey, whether that's a mammoth, like a juvenile, like you said, or maybe a horse, or maybe a buffalo or something like that. I could definitely see that. I think this is probably a good time to segue into talking about Smilodon, because that's a different box of frogs. Could you
It's
talk a little bit about the differences?
yes, yes. I could talk about the differences. Well, my Smilodon, he wasn't playing around. He wasn't chasing down things for a
No.
long time. Man, I saw an image of a Smilodon forearm, a humerus. I think that was the name of the bone. Compared to a lion, it's gigantic. It's very thick. He, he's. I saw some papers describing Smilodon as more bear than cat. It's very, very
Yeah.
strong. He had not only the largest canines of any cat alive or extinct, he had the probably the most robust build of all cats that ever lived. He was tracking down prey, yes, but differently from Homotherium, he was bringing them down alone or in pairs. We don't know yet, but either way, he needed much, much more strength compared to Homotherium. Since he was heavier, so a heavy animal would require more energy, more meat to maintain that weight. We are imagining an animal that could, I don't know, be two times, three times larger than modern day cats. Like a lion could weigh for um, 200 kilos. Meanwhile, Smilodon could go to 400 kilos. So it's a very large cat, very large. Some polar bear populations average 400 kilos. So imagine a cat like that. You can't.
Oh my god. Whew.
So I think the main difference with Homotherium is that one was relying on social life, was going after a mammoth with needed they needed some quite energy. He lived in the open steppe. There wasn't no ambush, no cover. So just like you said, he needed to sort things out his own way and through a pursuit. Meanwhile, Smilodon, living in closed habitat, had to make ambushes and pin down his prey all by himself and quick. Like there was lions, wolves, humans, bears, other saber-tooth, other big cats. So there was some tough competition during the
Yes,
Pleistocene.
sir. Yes, yes. Yeah, it's just a completely different cat. And I'm going to pull up your image. I think a lot of times people, when we think of a saber-toothed cat, we immediately go to Smilodon fatalis, but I'd love to pull up one that I feel like people don't talk about as much, and that's Smilodon populator, the South American
Yeah.
cat. So I'm going to quickly pull up the one that you did. I think the one that you did is excellent. I love the coloration. We can already see the completely different beast. I mean, look at this chonky little, not little, big chonky motherfucker. I mean,
he,
holy lord.
he's very
And
loud.
you've got, he's huge, and I like what you did with the mixture of coloration, because this would be in South America, and a lot of South American cats happen to have a lot of coloration, but you still put it in the zeitgeist of the ice age. Like, you look at the uh, the Ice Age horses that are most related to. I think their closest relative is the zebra, and they're always depicted as this brown, stripy, faded pattern. And you've got a little bit of that going on here too. I just think this looks so cool.
Thank you very much for the compliment. Well, this one is the largest possible specimen of Smilodon. 400 kilos of predatory cat. His arm is very large. He has a shorter lumbar, shorter column. His face is very large as well. I imagine a larger nose as well. His nasal opening was very open, and I would say very large. So I made this with all my heart. I would say it's my masterpiece. I think so. Well, let's talk about the pattern. The pattern I made was with the emphasis that this evolved from a cat that lived in the forest. Smilodon populator probably originated from Smilodon gracilis that came down to South America as a forest dweller and eventually evolved into a playing form. So I imagine a cat that recently evolved. Still has its
Ah,
rosettes like a forest cat, but it is slowly adapting to a more open life. He was the lion of its habitat. It's the dominant predator. So I imagine all of the prey present in the plains area, they were the largest too. The largest prey were present on the open areas like ground slots, like glyptodonts, many other species. They were on those areas. So if Smilodon wanted food, he needed to adapt to this kind of habitat. And that's where it starts to grow enormously. It's very, very large. It's often, um, as you said, shadowed by its cousin, North American cousin, Smilodon fatalis. But Smilodon populator, I think it's the real deal of what a terrifying saber tooth we imagine, like in the movies, like they're
yes,
starting
sir.
killing spree or immensely strong, immensely huge. That's Smilodon populator. So there is this chunky guy, very strong.
It's so cool, man. Yeah. I can't even imagine seeing that. I think that's the reason why we have this deep fear of the dark at night. Like, these are the monsters that we don't have around anymore. We have the luxury of going outside, grabbing a frozen burrito from the grocery store and coming back. And in the city, you can do all of that underground. We are woefully ignorant of just how crazy life must have been back then. You've got, like you were talking about this earlier, is that you have other cats,
Yes,
you have so many other impressive, terrifying predators. I mean, this Smilodon populator, yes, this was the apex predator, but it I don't know if it lived in the same area as something like a short-faced bear. I think short-faced bears were more northern, but the amount of competition, the amount of just sheer monstrosity that lived in the wild back then. Like I think the best thing I've ever heard someone say is that imagine the African savanna on crack. That's what it was like during the Ice Age.
yes, yes. There was short-faced bears down in South America too. To be honest, there was bears everywhere else. So cats needed to have be very aware. There are wolves South American too. So Smilodon wasn't alone. There was giant jaguars as well. There was jaguars that would weigh around the same weight as the largest tigers and lions for today. So everything is
Woo!
pretty much on crack. like you just said. So
Yeah.
uh, the Megalodon had some tough competition, but an animal achieved this size with the amount of competition it had. It's, I think, it's a signal of how much diverse and filled was the Pleistocene in terms of giant beasts like mammoths. There was elephant-like creatures across North America and South America, and they were native. Like we can't imagine that nowadays. We can't. We generally think of North America as bison, wolves, deer, elk, cougars, but there was lions, some dire wolves in the mix, even larger bears, mammoths, mastodons, and us, humans.
Yes, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. Is the dire wolf. I'd love to maybe go back to another drawing you have as well. I think it's a Smilodon fatalis. But since we're on the topic of the dire wolf, let me share a screen of the dire wolf that you did, and just maybe briefly talk about that, because that's another just incredible animal out there that I don't think is talked about nearly as much as it should be.
Well, I started doing the dire wolf. It was some very emotional moment for me because there was a recent reclassification of the dire wolf as Einosion virus. Previously, he
Yep,
was thought to be some kind of subspecies of wolf, but then we found out that it was a completely distinct species. To be
that
honest,
was the
it
coolest thing
was,
ever.
yes, it was very different from pretty much every canid alive today. But at the time of this publication, many artists started to take their own depictions of the dire wolf, and I felt like I needed to do it someday. So here it came. I made it based on South American canids. Imagine that dire wolf probably emerged from American canids. I took
Yes.
some inspiration from South American canids, pretty much of it, because they're more, uh, how I would say, they're more not so much known about that. Their patterns are different as well, and they live in a tropical environment, a canid of a tropical environment. So imagine that in Ocean followed the same thing, evolving from a tropical pattern to eventually regain a position like some kind of gray or wolf of the Pleistocene. It's very interesting because when we think of some large canid, a large, very large, we only think of wolves, but they 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 wasn't the only one to achieve those sizes to keep that role as top predator. Other canids can evolve to this as well, and the dire wolf is a proof of that. He could take a position similar to the gray wolf without being one, for example. So I made it have a black face similar to other canids from South America. I made the gray looking like a back in a reference to the jackals, who are thought to be their closest relatives, very, very distant, but the closest relatives. But
Right.
also made it look like more robust, a different body type than a wolf. A wolf is very long. It has a fluffy body. It has some sort of small ears, and I made those characteristics more distinctive in Anuncion. He has a shorter tail. He has a more thick leg, and also thick forearm. And I made a detail that I think no one noticed. I've made a pupil more like of a fox to make it more different than a wolf, which is round, for
Yeah.
example. So it can give a look of some ancient, ancient looking canid to make it more distinctive. I think it worked pretty well, I guess. I came out.
I think so too. It evokes something ancient. You coined it very well there, because that's exactly what it is, and that's what blew me away when there was the new classification, the Anocyon diarist. It's not Canis diarist, and I think it was Sergei Merjevsky who was explaining this really well, and you just did too. So pardon me for saying that, but they this Anocyon genus is believed to be evolved from South America and then traveled northward. So you're taking all these different liberties with the closest relatives, but I think in the way that you did it, it almost seems to me like this version of the direwolf that you have here on your Instagram, it feels to me like it could be in North America. Like it's a thicker fur, but I just yeah, it really struck me when I saw this illustration. And I hope someday that we find a dire wolf frozen in the permafrost. I know have found what is it, Siberian wolf or something like that frozen, but we have not seen a dire wolf yet.
And
And I
thirdly,
wonder.
there's a fossil record of direwolf in China, so they possibly crossed the
Wow.
Beringia Bridge. So there may be a direwolf somewhere waiting to be discovered. So it's pretty exciting to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
cross our fingers that that happens.
It's quite
uh,
like that.
yeah, yeah, Isaac. Let's talk about. I think we have time for maybe one more of your illustrations before we go. There's something that I saw that really I think is ingenious on your part, because I see a lot of different illustrations of Smilodon, and you touched on this earlier, but a lot of people who reconstruct the Smilodon, it's like they take mainly from the lion, because I think that is one of its closest ancestors, but we forget that, like for example with Smilodon fatalis, that's a North American cat. And there's an illustration here, a set of 3 where you have references of North American cats. And you've said it multiple times during the podcast, but you talk about lynxes, bobcats, and I just think there's something inherently profound about taking that inspiration, because this cat was a North American cat. It was in the same climate that some of these are in today. And so why not explore that color pattern? Why not explore the tufts on the side of the face? Why not explore the pointed tufts on the top of the ears? And I think it's really cool that you did that. Is this Smilodon fatalis or
It's Smilodon populator on the far left, Smilodon fatalis on the
okay?
center, and Smilodon gracilis on the first side
Got
of
you.
the right. This is a very
Okay.
old drawing, so I'm surprised that you bring that up. But the fundament of this is that Smilodon fatalis, yes, indeed, it was a North American cat, probably the most successful saber-tooth in North America. And I took the bobcat as example because it's currently the most successful cat, small cat species on North America. And it has this kind of messy coat. You can tell it starts with spots, then it fades and it blends more with a wooden forest closed habitat. It could work well with a forest or a bit of plain tall grass type of habitat. It also has some spots variation. So I really like it to use that as an inspiration. Meanwhile, Smilodon Populator in this earlier build, I used the Pampas cat because it shared a similar environment to Smilodon. And Smilodon gracilis, I used the Fisher cat because it looks very, I don't know, it looks different. It looks, I would say, like a progression thing. I imagine that Smilodon gracilis, then fatalis, and then eventually pop later, like an increase in size as more prey uh, become more abundant on North America, more larger prey, I would say, and different role niches that Smilodon could possibly have obtained. Fatalis in this artwork is quite it's the image that I had of him. A cat, a saber cat, but the one that predominantly dominated North America. He was very large. So I talked about how large Smilodon populator was, but Smilodon fatalis reached some similar weight, like from 200 to 300 kilos on maximum roughly. So it was pretty large, even with so much competition. And this is a statement of how successful it was before its demise. So the bobcat, as the most successful small cat nowadays in North America, can be a good point. Remember, they were forest dealers, so a spotting pattern is quite, mm, how I would say, it's quite possible. To be honest with you, there is a cave painting, a cave petroglyph that
Yes.
supposedly depicts Smilodon. So could be Fatalis. I use that as inspiration. Indeed was a spotted cat that lived in the forest, ambushing his prey. And I love the concept of using this bobcat as some sort of image, but some sort of inspiration because at the same time, it lives in similar environment. It's similar in the structure, like the short tail. It's something that I
Yeah.
always imagined as a kid. I think many of us did as a kid, like looking at a bobcat. Imagine, wow, if it was larger, it would probably be the closest thing to a saber tooth that we could have today. Just an example, a playful example. But I plan to do Smilodon Fatalis again, Smilodon Gracilis. I plan to do a lot of things. I'm just getting started, to be honest. Just like I said in the beginning of the conversation, there's a lot to come, and I think you will enjoy every part of it.
Oh,
There's
I
some
think
good
so
in it.
too. I think so too, Isaac. Yeah, and I can't wait to see what you create. It's so cool to see over time how people learn more and more about these cats, how the reconstructions change. It's the same as, the T-Rex. We used to think of the T-Rex in a certain way, and then we have to add certain elements the more we learn, and these cats become more and more accurate in their reconstructions. So I'm really it was a huge pleasure to talk to you today, Isaac. And if you ever want to come again, when you get the Smilodons done again, or any other creature you want to do and share it, it'd be my pleasure to talk to you about it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will come back with more information, probably much more to cover. Also, a better English, I would say. But
Oh no, no, your English is
there's a
fine.
lot more to come. But I will get back here to talk with you. It was a pleasure, and a very special opportunity for me. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, Isaac. Before you go, if people want to commission you to have any drawings done, if they want to find out more about you, where would they go?
They could check my Twitter, Isaac OWG, or Instagram. I can do payment through PayPal or Brazilian Pix. And I'm in a special offer of $10 simple sketch or drawing. So it's pretty on promotion right now. It's quite easy. And the special price. Well, I'm active on Paleo Art, but I'm always open to different projects and everything else. I'm very curious and very, I would say, an adventurer. I like to jump from inspiration to inspiration, thing to thing. Well, as you saw it in all my explanations.
Sweet. Sweet, man. Well, I can't wait to see what the developments of the future may hold. And I hope anybody who wants to get in touch with you will do so ASAP. Get this dude drawn for you right now. And I'll see you next time, Isaac. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Peace out, world.